to the FAFSA Leadership Lounge, where we dive into the policies shaping the work of Florida's school leaders. I'm Michelle White, Executive Director of the Florida Association of School Administrators.
And I'm Jessica Janasiewicz, a lobbyist for FAFSA and several other school districts in Florida.
So this week marked the first round of interim committee meetings for the Florida Legislature, a time when lawmakers returned to the Capitol to lay out the groundwork for the 2025 legislative session. Education took center stage in several committees this week, with discussions ranging from literacy and student outcomes to school funding and transition planning for students with disabilities. So let's break that down.
First up, the House Student Success Subcommittee focused on literacy and student achievement. Lawmakers heard from state regional literacy directors, including Executive Director Paige Michael and Lead Director Dr. Jacqueline Carey. They discussed how literacy initiatives are being implemented across Florida and how those efforts are helping teachers and students in the classroom. The Department of Education also shared an update on student outcomes and graduation requirements. Senior Chancellor Dr. Paul Burns and Vice Chancellor Lindsey Brown presented statewide data and discussed ongoing efforts to boost literacy and improve graduation rates.
Meanwhile, the House Education Administration Subcommittee reviewed portions of a major education bill passed last session, known as House Bill 1105. The committee received an implementation update and then shifted its focus to transition planning for students with disabilities. The panel discussed strategies to better support students as they move from high school into college, career, or independent living, a critical topic ensuring all Florida students are prepared for life after graduation.
On the appropriations side, the Big Senate Appropriations Committee heard from Amy Baker, who is the coordinator of the Office of Economic and Demographic Research. She presented the state's long-range financial outlook. Essentially, this is Florida's fiscal roadmap for the next few years. Her presentation highlighted economic trends, projected revenues, and potential budget challenges that lawmakers are going to have to navigate as they shape next year's spending plan.
So back in the House, the Pre-K through 12 Appropriations Subcommittee tackled some complex financial issues of its own. A panel of school district CFOs, representatives from the Department of Education, Step Up for Students, and the AAA Scholarship Foundation joined lawmakers to discuss the resolution of outstanding budget issues from the current fiscal year. The discussion centered on funding allocations and the reimbursement processes and how to make the system more efficient. The chair also outlined the early stages of developing the fiscal year 26-27 pre-K through 12 education budget, setting the stage for what's sure to be a busy few months ahead.
The takeaway from week one is we can expect the legislature to double down on literacy reforms, accountability in school choice programs, and improve post-secondary transition to supports. Education will likely remain at the center of policy and budget debates.
And Amy Baker's long-range financial outlook presentation to the Senate Appropriations Committee established the economic backdrop for all upcoming budget talks. Florida's economy remains strong, but Baker cautioned about moderating growth, the impact of inflation on state costs, and possible future revenue pressures. Lawmakers were reminded that many new initiatives must fit within a balanced budget, meaning priorities like healthcare, infrastructure, and education will compete for limited flexibility. This leads us to believe that we can expect a fiscally conservative approach to budgeting, with leadership emphasizing restraint, efficiency, and targeted investments rather than major spending expansions.
Some other takeaways in healthcare and Medicaid are looming large in the legislature's view. Following the fiscal briefings, the lawmakers, particularly House leaders, signaled that Medicaid costs will be a central focus of next year's budget planning. Expect continued scrutiny of the directed payment program and discussions about sustainability of healthcare funding within the broader state budget. And of course, we tend to compete with healthcare. They're usually a third of the budget. Education is a third of the budget. So if we're seeing that more money is going to have to be directed there, that could certainly mean that less is coming our way in pre-K-12 education. Week one of Florida's interim committee meetings set a disciplined, education focused, and a fiscally cautious tone for the months ahead. Lawmakers are signaling that literacy achievement, special education, and responsible budgeting will shape the core of the 2026 session, all under the guiding principle of doing more with less.
And of course, this week, as we get started, is a second committee week. And pretty much every education committee will be meeting. So I highly encourage you to make sure you're reading your FAFSA Friday Facts each Friday morning, and look for some updates in there. And the Monday news tracker will also share out what is moving and what's going on. So as we get started last week, the House held a formal designation or induction ceremony in the House chamber to name Representative Sam Garrison as the next Speaker of the House for the 2026-2028 term. The selection was unanimous, following the usual practice that the majority party, in this case the Republicans, chooses its Speaker designate in advance. The ceremony was largely ceremonial, confirming a leadership decision that had been settled internally. During the event, outgoing and current House members were present to witness Garrison's remarks in the formal transition of the Speaker designate role. Garrison later met with reporters and engaged in questions about issues such as Medicaid and fiscal responsibility.
In his acceptance speech and subsequent comments, Garrison made a number of themes and warnings central to his vision for his leadership. He emphasized that Republicans, despite their strong majority, must avoid complacency. He called complacency the, quote, single biggest threat to the conservative movement in Florida. He cautioned that if leadership becomes more interested in political performance art than delivering results, strong economies, safe communities, quality schools, then the party is going to have to self-correct. Garrison stressed that legislators must remember that behind every policy, every bill, every budget decision, there are people, constituents whose lives are affected. He said, quote, true leadership is about serving. Behind every bill are people. And he asked rhetorically, did we do the arduous work of leading this state and fighting for our people back home? He spoke of the House as the branch that most closely reflects the will of the people, noting its size and the energy of its debates. Garrison invoked the historical shift in party control in Florida. He noted how the House had been under Democratic control for well over a century, and now that Republicans sit in, quote, the shade of the trees that these conservative giants have planted. He also made reference to the leadership succession, noting that Representative Jennifer Kennedy is slated to be the future speaker after him, and reflected on the legacy of previous speakers, including John Thrasher, as part of that legacy. Garrison acknowledged that disagreements and tension between the House and the Senate and the governor are not necessarily inherently bad. The legislative process is designed to be messy, and we're going to wrestle through these sorts of things, he said. He pledged to maintain a balanced budget that reflects the priorities of Florida.
Further, in some press remarks, he reiterated that fiscal responsibility would be a central focus. He criticized the expansion of Medicaid for low-income, childless adults and affirmed support for maintaining Florida's current Medicaid policies. He viewed recent federal changes affecting Medicaid, especially the directed payment program, as challenging, but underscored the need to ensure that state dollars are used efficiently and toward people in real need. Garrison aligned with the existing House leadership's approach on healthcare, financing, and pledged to carry those priorities forward. As a symbolic gesture, Garrison presented House Republicans with leather-bound copies of the Federalist Papers, with bookmarks made from chairs formerly used in the House chamber. He called it the, quote, not the fanciest, but intentional. He also reflected on an earlier conversation with former Speaker John Thrasher, remarking that Thrasher had expressed pride in him and in Clay County's representation.
As we have discussed previously, under current Speaker Danny Perez, the House sometimes clashed publicly with the governor over assertiveness and House autonomy. Garrison's remarks suggest that he sees a role for creative tension, but also for preserving the institutional strength and party discipline. Perez has already stressed the independence of the House from the executive branch, and Garrison's tone indicates that there's some continuity in that area, but with an emphasis on internal unity and avoiding other distractions. In policy areas, Garrison's remarks show that healthcare and Medicaid will be high priority areas under his speakership, especially in light of the looming federal changes and possible revenue pressures.
So during the week of October 6th through the 10th, Governor DeSantis made it clear that property taxes are at the top of his agenda. He's signaling the possibility of a special legislative session in 2026, specifically focused on property tax reform, a move timed strategically ahead of the Republican primary season. At the same time, his administration, through the Department of Government Efficiency, has been reviewing local budgets, pointing out what it calls instances of financial mismanagement. The idea is to show that property tax reductions are possible without sacrificing essential services.
He's also advocating for a constitutional amendment on the November 2026 ballot that would allow voters to decide whether homesteaded property owners get a complete elimination of property taxes. That is a big deal. It could change how cities and counties fund schools, public safety, and other services. Critics argue that these cuts could leave local government scrambling, while supporters say it would ease the financial burden on homeowners and stimulate economic growth. One thing is clear. This issue is set to dominate Florida politics heading into the 2026 legislative session. So what should all Floridians be watching? Well, keep an eye on announcements from the House and the Senate about any hearings or bills that are related to property taxes, and expect plenty of debate over the next year. Whether you're a homeowner, a business owner, or just a taxpayer, this could all impact your wallet in a very big way. We also had some movement this week that was a result of legislation that was passed in the 2025 session that just ended a little bit ago. About 20 or so school districts received letters from Matter Academy stating that they wished to co-locate at a number of schools within these districts, as they can do now based on the legislation that it would expand what the schools of hope are allowing for them to do. The interesting thing here is this was a bit premature. The law actually stated that these letters, these declarations of intent, essentially could come out 2 weeks after the rule is finalized. Well, the rule is not finalized just yet. So the letters came a little bit early, but it's certainly a good indicator for us about the interest that there is going to be from these entities to co-locate within our schools. So those 20 or so districts that got letters obviously will respond, but I have a feeling this is going to be something that we're talking about throughout the legislative session.
Absolutely. And of course, Matter Academy is one of a few charter operators that are already approved for the Schools of Hope program.
Yeah.
And they're giving clear intent that they want to expand their reach. And so a lot of work has been done already by our partners at the Superintendents Association. They are in direct communication with school district leadership to make sure that they understand the capacity of all of their buildings and where there are vacancies based off of reports from previous years. Of course, that doesn't take into account any changes that were made to those schools over the summer to get them to a better capacity. So more to come for sure. That is our update this week. We thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to share the FAFSA Leadership Lounge with your colleagues. Our list of bills is growing on the FAFSA website, so make sure you head over to FAFSA.net and click on advocacy to see the status of that. And we encourage you to stay tuned for more.
Thank you for listening to the Leadership Lounge podcast presented by the Florida Association of School Administrators. Today's podcast was hosted by Michelle White and Jessica Janasiewicz. The podcast was produced by Jeff Willoughby. Original musical recordings by David Higgins. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. New episodes are released each Monday. For show topics, suggestions, questions, or comments, please email communications@fasa.net. We hope you enjoyed the show.